In this lesson, we're looking at multi-step equations with variables on one side. Now, before we get started, this lesson is a part of my free multi-step equations course. So if you want the guided notes and practice that go along with this video, check out the free course linked in my description. Okay, so now let's get into it. Let's take a look at multi-step equations. In this lesson, we're going to review what an equation is and how to solve it, use the distributive property, combine like terms, solve multi-step equations step by step, and use inverse operations. The quick strategies that we're going to use, we're going to look to see if we have to distribute first, if we see parentheses, combine like terms if needed on the same side. And then, of course, the last step is to isolate that variable by dividing. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, let's take a look at what is an equation and how do we solve it. So an equation is a math sentence with an equal sign. So hence equation. The equal sign means both sides have the same value. And our goal is to find the value of the variable that makes the equation true. So in this case, our example here, we have 3x plus 5 equals 17. We will want to solve for that x. Now next, let's take a look at inverse operations. Our inverse operations are addition and subtraction, multiplication and division, and we use inverse operations to undo what is happening to the variable. Okay? And so how do we solve? First, simplify each side if needed. So we combine like terms. And so our use the distributive property. Um, if we combine like terms, they need to be terms with the same variable and exponent, or they need to be constants, meaning without a variable. Use inverse operations to isolate the variable. So we just discussed that our inverse operations are addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. And we want to do the same thing to both sides of the equation. We want to keep the equation balanced. And we want to check our answer. We can write it out or just check it mentally. So when we check our answer, we should be able to plug in that value that we're given, and it should make both sides equal the same thing. So right here, we're just looking at what keeps an equation balanced. A simple way to think about inverse operations. And so the example here, we have a balancing scale and both sides equal. So in the example, x plus 5 equals 12. The x plus 5 right here is equal to the 12. So an equation stays balanced when both sides are equal. So whatever you do to one side, you must do it to the other side. And we do that by using inverse operations, and we're undoing what's happening to the variable. So our example here, we have x plus 5 equals 12. Since that is a plus 5, we want to isolate the variable, so we subtract 5 from both sides. And we have it right here. It cancels out. 5 minus 5 is 0, but 12 minus 5 is 7. And if we check it, plug in 7 for x. 7 plus 5 is 12. And so that equation, the answer that we got, does check out. All right, so now let's get started with some practice for the multi-step equations. So let's take a look at example 1. I'm going to do 2 examples with you, 2 guided practice, and then you're going to try 2 on your own. So for example 1 here, we have 5 times 1 minus 2w plus 8w equals 15. You can take a look at the strategies on the right-hand side, but I am going to solve this problem using those strategies. So the first thing we want to do, we want to use the distributive property. So you want to look to see if you have parentheses, and if you do, use the distributive property. So whatever numbers on the outside, you multiply that through to all numbers on the inside of the parentheses. So I'm multiplying 5 times 1. That gives me 5. 5 times negative 2w. 5 times 2 is 10, so that would be a minus 10w. This minus applies to that 2. And then I want to bring down everything else. I'm bringing down that 8w and that 15. Next, I want to see if I have like terms on the same side. And I do. Negative 10w plus 8w. So they both have w's. I can combine them. So I'm going to bring down my 5 and negative 10 plus 8. So it's negative 10 plus 8. That is a negative 2. So I'm going to write that as minus 2w. I'm going to bring down that 15. All right. Next, I want to solve for w. So I'm left with a two-step equation here. But I want to get rid of, when we're solving a two-step equation, we always want to add or subtract first and then divide if it's in this form. So the 5 is being added, and we know it's being added because we don't see a negative sign in front. So that 5 is positive. So to get rid of it, we have to subtract it. So inverse is addition and subtraction. And we subtract 5 from both sides. Cancels out. Bring down that 2w, or negative 2w. Now 15 minus 5 is 10. And our last step, if you see a variable and an exponent written, a variable and a number written together with no operations in between, we read that as negative 2 times w. So if it's all together, so like here, we can read this as 8 times w, okay? So since this is multiplication, our inverse is division, and so we want to divide both sides by negative 2, and we want to divide by whatever's next to the variable because our goal is to isolate the variable. So over here, cancels out. Left with just that w. But 10 divided by 2, so remember that a fraction bar is also division. So 10 divided by 2 is a negative 5. So w equals negative 5, okay? So I'm going to check the first one so we don't make the lesson too long here. So if I plug in negative 5 everywhere I see w, I'm going to check it right here. 5 times 1 minus 2 times negative 5 plus 8 times negative 5 equals 15. I tried to keep it in the box. All right, so I'm going to work with what's inside the parentheses right here. So negative 2 times negative 5 is a positive 10. And positive 10 plus 1 is 11. So 5 times 11. And then we have 8 times negative 5. That is a negative 40. Bring down at 15. Now we have 5 times 11. That is 55 minus 40. So here I'm just checking it. And 55 minus 40 is 15. And it checks out. And so we have solved this equation. Our answer is w minus 5. And this is just a problem with the work a little neater. So here I'm just showing you the work that's a little neater right here. But let's move on to example 2. Example 2, we have 17 equals 3 times p minus 5 plus 8. So again, always look for parentheses, and we have them. So we're going to distribute that 3. Okay, so I bring down this 17. 3 times p is 3p. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Bring down that plus 8. So now do you see our like terms? Hopefully you do. Our like terms are negative 15 plus 8. And they are constants. So although they're not the same number, they are like terms because they don't have variables. So we can combine them. Okay, so that's what's considered like terms. They have the same variable or they don't have a variable at all. So I'm bringing down this 3p. Now what is negative 15 plus 8? That is a negative 7. So make sure that you're always paying attention to your sign because we could make the mistake and do 15 plus 8 and get 23. That would be incorrect. And so make sure that you're paying attention to the signs in front of the numbers that you're using. So minus 15, we're looking at that as a negative 15. All right. Now, let's finish this two-step equation. Since that is a minus 7, so we add or subtract first, then multiply or divide. So we're going to add 7. 17 plus 7 is 24. Bring down that 3p. And again, from example 1, remember we read that as 3 times p. So the inverse would be division. So you divide by whatever is next to that variable because our goal is to isolate the variable. Cancels. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So my answer is A equals P, or we read from left to right, P equals 8. And I said I wasn't going to check the second one, but I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. So 17 equals 3. Plugging in 8 for P, because this is a little shorter here. Parentheses, so I don't have to distribute because I have two numbers that I can combine inside the parentheses. So at this point, we're doing order of operations. And so with equations, if you're checking, you're using order of operations. And so parentheses first. So 8 minus 5 is 3. And now those parentheses are understood to be multiplication. All right. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 8 is, of course, 17. And it does check out. All right. So now I'm going to give you 2 problems to try on your own. And just like example 1, example 2, this is just to work a little neater here. So if you want to take a screenshot of it, or, if you just want neater work, this is why I have it. But let's move on to some independent practice. So I have 2 problems that I would like for you to try on your own here. But just a special note with number 2, practice 2, we have that minus sign here. We don't say a number in front, right? That is an understood 1. So just to kind of help you out, my first step would be to distribute a -1 through. Okay, I didn't want that to throw you off. So go ahead and pause the video and try these 2 problems on your own. So I have the answers right here. You should have gotten n equals 2 and n equals 3 over 2. Or if you got 1.5, that is fine. All right. So hopefully you got those 2 correct. And we've reached the end of our lesson. And I want to thank you for learning with me.